Okay, Part 6. Passing Professor Gundolf's classes. You finished this class very quickly, Lady Rosamund, Eglinton said. I am truly surprised. Would it be safe to invite you to a tea party now, perhaps? I already knew my response was going to be absolutely not. I have been told to avoid the royal family as much as possible. Besides, I wanted my next tea party to be with Dunkelfelder. We had our joint research to discuss, plus I still needed to speak with Clarissa. My sincerest apologies, but I must begin taking the scholar course, I said. A tea party in the near future would not be feasible. I see. In that case, we may have one after you have completed the scholar course. I nodded with a smile and exited the classroom. Now that I was done with my third-year Archduke candidate classes, my aim was to dive straight into the scholar course. I returned to my chambers, whereupon I sent letters to one professor of the scholar course after another, prioritizing the Archduke candidate course. I hadn't been able to attend the first day of the scholar course or take its test, so I was having to schedule separate retakes. I need to finish soon, otherwise I'll miss my chance to have a tea party with Dunkelfelder. My initial goal for this academic year had been to finish the magic tools that I wanted for my library, but now it was to complete a joint research project about divine protections. I was about to be very busy, so I wanted to finish my classes as soon as possible. The scholar course was made up of several classes that were compulsory for all students, including the making of magic tools, in-depth magic circle studies, and learning to read old literature. As well as these, however, there were also several classes that one could take according to one's own preferences. There were a lot of more specialized, with examples including how to gather information or how to pretty much become a doctor, among other things. Naturally, Ferdinand had taught me the content of every single one, meaning I would be able to secure passing grades in them all unless something disastrous happened. Please let the professors have spare time. Professors wouldn't allow retakes unless they were free, so I could only pray to the gods, and it seemed that my prayers were answered as I soon received a response from Gundolf. He had led 3 lessons of the scholar course, and I wanted to use this opportunity to finish all of them. I thank you ever so much for taking time out of your busy day for me, Professor Gundolf. Lady Rosamund, right this way. Dressed in my brewing clothes, and with Feline and Roderick carrying the ingredients I needed, I stepped into Gundolf's laboratory in the Scholar Building. I recalled that Professor's laboratory had been an absolute mess, and this was no different. Perhaps it was just a universal truth that the only clean part of a laboratory was the brewing area. Everywhere else was covered with papers. So, shall we begin? Gundolf asked. All students took a practical class for separating mana, but the scholar course was a bit more advanced. It began with splitting mana according to its elements and then creating materials that suited it. I had taken Sylvester's advice and decompressed my mana so I could now brew with my staff without incident. I thank you ever so much, Sylvester. And so I started putting ingredients into the brewing pot just to make the assigned potions. Gundolf watched me carefully all the while, stroking his beard. I was very well accustomed to brewing at this point, but one-on-one examinations like this were still surprisingly tense. I see that you even use the time-saving magic circle, Lady Rosamund. Ferdinand taught me how. My body is so weak that I often need to use rejuvenation potions, but brewing for long periods of time is a struggle for someone of my size. The circle allows me to make the potion as regularly as I need them. Plus, I was trying to finish several classes all at once here. I couldn't afford not to use the same time-saving circle. You make your own potions? Gundolf asked. I do. Ferdinand was adamant that I at least learn the process, and thanks to that, I am not suffering a shortage in his absence, I said with a smile. I cannot count on my guardians forever. Gundolf met my response with a frown. That is not what I meant. Archduke candidates are supposed to leave brewing to their retainer scholars. There is much that an Archduke candidate needs to prioritize over brewing their own potions, is there not? Wait, what? Brewing is scholar work? This is my first time hearing that. She's trying to be a scholar, dude! What do you expect? I had always assumed that brewing one's own potions were normal. Ferdinand would always make mine for me and say that it would be shameful for me not to be able to produce my own. On the contrary, however, a normal Archduke candidate would apparently leave any brewing to their scholars. Okay. I thought about leaving my potion making to Feline and Roderick, then shook my head. I could entrust such a duty to Hartmut, but those two wouldn't be able to endure it. Not at all. The potions that Ferdinand made for me are a special brew, I explained. They require so much mana as well as rare ingredients that even archnobles would only barely be able to make them. What potions are those, then? The recipe's a secret, I replied. Oh, I'm done. Will this do? I directed Gundolf's attention to the finished potion, helping to change the focus of our conversation. After just a brief glance, Gundolf nodded and gave me a passing grade. You brewed with thoroughly experienced motions, but had completely stable mana despite using the time-saving magic circle, and did not fail in any measure. Continue brewing the other potions with equal excellence. Right. I swiftly moved on to the next potion, chatting with Gundolf while I brewed. He He was most interested in the Divine Protections ritual and asked many questions on the subject. I am afraid that I cannot answer those of my own will, I said. The royal family has involved themselves in this business, and we plan to publish our results during the introductory tournament. We have already consulted Lady Hannelore, and with Dunkelfelger's permission, we are going to have this be a joint research. I was trying to use the authority of a top-ranking duchy to prevent any further questioning from Gundalf, but would it not be more efficient for you to collaborate with Jerwanko? We would have if we were focusing on magic tools or circles, but Jerwanko does not seem to have any students who obtained multiple divine protections. In that case, shall we do joint research on magic tools? He was as persistent as ever, it seemed. I shook my head in response to his invitation for me to join him and said in my firmest voice, I have decided to join Professor Hersher's laboratory. I already had plans for Hersher to keep a lot of secrets, and as she was the Ehrenfest dormitory supervisor, we wouldn't need to worry about our research being stolen by another duchy. Most of all, Raymond also being in the laboratory will make it easier for me to contact Ferdinand and work on developing more magic tools. There were still a bunch that I wanted for my library, although I hadn't given up my plan to make a sound recording magic tool that I could stuff with reproof for Ferdinand. But Hersher's laboratory my laboratory has better funding and higher quality ingredients. That's nice, but I am not lacking in funding at the moment, I said. Gundalf may have opted for a more tactful approach, but I was perfectly capable of reading between the lines. Hersher was probably struggling for money as a result of receiving no assistance from her home duchy. Ferdinand had said something about supporting her himself, but I doubted that Hersher would fully take him up on the offer. Maybe it would be better for me to compensate her for letting me stay in her laboratory. To be honest, she needs food and sleep more than she needs money. How unfortunate. Your ideas are often extraordinarily unique, Lady Rosamund. They would have been excellent stimuli for my research, Gundalf said, finally surrendering with a look of regret. The fact that he knew when to give up, just as Ferdinand had said, made me like him a little bit more. I am interested in magic tool paper, I said. Once I am in a position to spend time researching it, I would very much like to collaborate with Jerwanko. Oh ho, magic tool paper, such as which Fabi's skin is most suitable for making it? No, I wish to look into whether such paper can be made from materials other than Fabi's skin. There was a sudden glimmer in Gundalf's eyes, and an intrigued smile spread across his face. I see. Jerwanko would certainly be better suited for research of that manner than Dunkelfelger. I look forward to working with you. That said, I'm going to be too busy for us to collaborate this year. Gundalf gave me a confused look. Can you not instruct someone to work in your place? You are far from Ehrenfest's only scholar, and it seemed unreasonable for an Archduke candidate to manage an entire duchy's research single-handedly. That you would take matters into your own hands makes sense for your research into divine protections, as the royal family is involved with that, but why must you do the same here? I stared at him in shock, the scales at last falling from my eyes. It hadn't even occurred to me that I could dump this research onto the people. As you are an Archduke candidate, the development of your duchy should be your main focus, Gundalf continued. You are taking the scholar course, so you will need to carry out some personal research as well, but you must differentiate between that which you cannot progress without you and that which can. Else you will never make any progress in either. Your attention is currently being torn between many interesting subjects. I would suggest that you delegate the bulk of your research to other scholars, making sure to direct them and oversee their progress, and think about how to best utilize their results. At the very least, this is how we do things in Jerwanko. I was trying to do everything myself, rather than raising other scholars as an Archduke candidate should. In other words, I was doing the same thing that Ferdinand always did. You're taking after Ferdinand in more ways than one, dude! Quit it! I would also recommend that you do this paper research with Jerwanko, Gundalf said. I am very confident in our selection of quality ingredients. That sounds wonderful. Ehrenfest is still lacking in that area. The many years I spent as a Royal Academy professor have also graced me with a great many tools for brewing. Recreating the research results of the not-so-distant past is far from out of the question for me. I broke into a smile. Now you really have my attention. I have taken an interest in the lessons of the past, particularly those held in the days when students did not receive their staffs during their first year. Few professors remain from that generation when staffs were obtained during one's graduation. There are study guides of past students available in the library, but no work documents of the professors, so one can only get a vague idea of the lessons that took place back then. Tell me, what was taught in what years? I would very much like instructional material written from a professor's perspective. This can be discussed during our research. Truly? Oh my, I'm looking forward to it. I was ultimately convinced, so it was decided that Ehrenfest and Jerwanko will research magic tool paper together. The rest of our time was focused on my retakes, wherein I passed 1 written and 2 brewing lessons. Once I was done, I made my way back to the Airfest common room to report my results. So basically, we're going to be doing a joint research project with Yoko as well. How does this keep happening? Wilfried exclaimed. The look of a complete outrage he was giving me was completely unwarranted, in my opinion. How can anyone fault me for something as harmless as telling Gundalf that I wanted to research paper and indicating that I wanted the instructional materials of past professors? I mean, what's wrong with the last one? I mean, the first one I can kind of understand, because you didn't consult Sylvester about this, but the second one shouldn't be that big a deal. It had only been by a fortunate coincidence that we had entered this mutually beneficial arrangement. You and Charlotte are assisting with printing and papermaking at the moment, no? I asked. I must ask you to pivot into researching something for me. The extent to which paper made from our Duchess Fabies or Fey plants can be turned into magic tools, how this paper can be used and such. Does this not sound more appropriate for Ehrenfest? Ignaz and Marianne exchanged glances. Rosemine, Wilfried said, do you intend to get Charlotte and my scholars involved in your research? But of course, Felina and Roderick are busy gathering and writing stories, and they are going to be essential to our research in divine protections, considering the results of their rituals. I also consider this an excellent opportunity to show everyone that you and Charlotte are just as involved in the printing and papermaking industry as I. Keeping all the praise for myself was far from ideal. If we wanted to get rid of Sylvester's reputation as a cruel archduke who only forced work onto his half-brother and adopted daughter, then it was necessary for his blood-related children to demonstrate that they had jobs as well, and were working hard to complete them. Now do not misunderstand me. I am not saying that scholars who are already busy should drop their current research for my sake. Rather, I simply believe that the retainers of our Archduke candidates should make printing and papermaking their primary focus, as those are Ehrenfest's core industries now. And what if our appropriate apprentice scholars refuse? I turned to look at Miriella, who was due to become my retainer after giving me her name. She was reading one of Evara's books with a dreamy expression. I will put Miriella in charge of the research and give the work to the apprentice scholars of the former Veronica faction, I said. They no longer need to give us their names, so most of them will not become my retainers. But their futures can still change for the better if they demonstrate their value in researching our duchy's largest industries. You might want to bring that up to Sylvester if you, just in case. The families who had avoided execution were still considered criminals, so upon returning to Ehrenfest, any students of the former Veronica faction were bound to receive harsh looks from those who thought them guilty by association. If those students could demonstrate their worth to the duchy, however, then I was sure that the adults would soften up to them at least a little over time. If your and Charlotte's apprentice scholars are to be put in charge instead, then I would suggest that you have Bartold and Cassandra give their names sooner rather than later, I said. If all goes well, then this work should strengthen their bonds with your other retainers, and their connections should secure us help from the former Veronica faction's apprentice scholars as well. Wolfrey turned to Ignaz, who was standing next to him. What do you think? Do you have anything else you're researching? No, I am still debating what to focus on for my graduation. I think I would appreciate the opportunity that Lady Rosemine has proposed, though. It would surely benefit us both. Got it, Wolfrey replied with an affirming nod. Rosemine, we'll put Ignaz and Bartold at the center of this paper research. Do not forget my retainers, brother, Charlotte interjected. Marianne, would you be willing? Marianne smiled. Yes, of course, Lady Charlotte, and with that, our problems were solved. We were going to be able to collaborate with Duranko after all. First things first, though. We're going to need those students to give us their names, Wolfried said. I'm going to the gathering spot with my retainers this Earth Day to get materials for Miriella, I noted. Perhaps you could have your guard knights join them for Bartold and Cassandra? A scholar and an attendant cannot be expected to get suitable materials for our name swearing on their own. Plus, now the children of the former Veronica faction were distancing themselves a bit from those who intended to give their names. It was important that Wilfred and Charlotte recognize their obligation to start supporting their soon-to-be retainers. Your eyes are as sharp as ever, sister, Charlotte said. Natalie, go ask Cassandra her plans for next Earth Day. I wish to invite her to join those gathering materials. After watching Natalie, Charlotte's guard knight, leave the common room, Wilfred told Alexis to speak with Bartold. Everyone was now accounted for, but as it started to relax, Grisha called Judith to a secluded spot in the room. They appeared to be discussing something. Lady Rosemine, Judith said when she returned looking conflicted. Yes? Grisha just said that she also wants to go to the Earth Day gathering, so that she can give her name too. Wait, what? But... As I recalled, Grisha's family had managed to avoid punishment. There was no obligation for her to give her name to anyone. Riarda, it seems that Grisha has something to say to us, I said. May we? You have enough guard knights present, so yes, you may. Oh boy, here we go. I'm assuming her circumstances are kind of similar to Feline's and Roderick's. Maybe. I guess we'll find out. I asked for a separate room to be prepared, then made my way there with Gracia. She was a 4th year the same as Judith, which made her 1 year older than me. Everyone in their grade had worked together back when they were in their 2nd year, and the Better Grades Committee was first established, so they were closer with each other than they were with their seniors. That might have explained why Gracia was almost hiding behind Judith. It was rare to see a noble acting timid so openly. Gracia always wore her gray hair in a large braid that reached down her back. It was very similar to how Lazletta wore hers, except that Gracia took care to ensure that not a single strand was out of place. She was dressed in particularly bland clothes, which I assumed was so that she wouldn't stand out. But unfortunately for her, she had developed shockingly well for a young woman her age, so my eyes were naturally drawn to her chest. So she has a big chest. Okay. Gracia, I said. Yes, she replied. Our conversation had barely even started, but it was already apparent that she was something of a gloomy shut-in. She was maintaining a neutral expression, but her voice was quavering and she was clasping her hands together. I heard from Judith that you wished to give me your name. Yes, my lady, please accept my request. I wish to hear your reasoning before anything else. There is no need for you to take such action, is there? Gracia looked at Matthias and Lorenz with wavering eyes and looked down at her feet. I want a guardian, she finally said. A guardian? You wouldn't need to... I stopped mid-sentence. The children of the former Veronica faction certainly couldn't become retainers without first giving their names. This is my only chance, Gracia said, shooting her head up and staring at me in desperation. Her eyes had thus far been hidden from her by her bangs, so this was my first time seeing them properly. They were a pleasant bluish green. Yeah, she did get... She's like, dang it, how old is Rosamine? 12 at this point? So she's 13. Wow, you feel that quick, girl? Dang! This is my only hope, Gracia stressed. I'm sorry, but I don't understand, I said. Gracia pressed her lips together, then took out a sound-blocking magic tool. I don't want others to know about my family's circumstances. I gave Riarda a look, silently conveying my question of whether it was safe for me to comply. In response, she directed Brunhilde to inspect the magic tool for any danger. My retainers were now extra sensitive about what I touched, owing to our previous incident, so she checked it over thoroughly for poison or any dangerous magic circles. It was all done so smoothly that I couldn't help but marvel at how quickly my retainers had adapted. That's good. After finishing her checks, Brunhilde handed me the sound-blocking magic tool. Meanwhile, Gracia was watching me carefully, wanting to confirm that I was firmly gripping the tool. Her confession really must have been the one she didn't want others to hear. I was born in the temple, she eventually admitted. What? I'm a daughter of a blue priest and a blue shrine maiden. At least that's what I've always been told. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so that can also happen, where blue priests and blue shrine maidens can... Actually, that makes perfect sense. They can happen. It's just taboo for the whole blue priest, gray priest thing. Or for a blue shrine maiden, I mean. I could only listen in a daze as Gracia continued her completely unexpected story. It all started before the countrywide purge, she said, before the temple had experienced its mana shortage, when there was still many blue priests and shrine maidens. Hearing the words blue priest had consistently brought images of old men without much mana to my mind, but apparently that trend hadn't always existed. According to Gracia, during those older days of the temple, a blue shrine maiden and a blue priest of men noble origins had formed a secret romance, or fostered a secret romance. They had attempted to keep their relationship a secret, only for everything to be revealed when the shrine maiden became pregnant. They couldn't get married due to being in the temple, Gracia explained. My birth mother asked if she and the priest could return to their respective families and marry there, but she was mocked for making requests so far above her station. She was sent back home in the end, but she was considered a disgrace and confined to a side building. I'm told that my birth mother never saw the blue priest whom she loved again. I wonder who it is. Is it somebody we know? Gracia had ended up being raised in this side building until she was baptized. And all the while, her birth mother had grumbled about how much better her life had been before she was burning with a child. Well, that's your fault, lady. You didn't... I don't even know if they've got protection in that world, but I mean, it's y'all's fault for having sex. Before she became pregnant with me, my birth mother received support from her family and subsidiary payments from the Archduke. She had been pampered when traveling across the province for rituals, receiving money and gifts. Loyal Grey Priests and Shrine Maidens had served her as her attendants, a stark contrast to the guards she had received in the side building. And she had apparently been very happy with the man she loved. That was before I was born and ruined everything. Oh, it's not your fault! You didn't ask for that! You didn't ask to be born in that family! The purge and mass exodus of sovereignty had then occurred, leaving each duchy with a considerable lack of nobles, and spurring the integration of temple children back into noble society. Grisha had spent her entire life up to that point being raised to be a servant, but the circumstances had resulted in her mana being measured. The next thing she knew, her birth mother's older brother and his first wife had taken her as their daughter so that they could use her for a political marriage. Great. So, her uncle and his wife. Okay. So they baptized me so they became my parents, but not once had they shown me even the slightest trace of warmth or affection. Christian continued, they simply told me again and again not to embarrass myself or disgrace them as my mother had, since I was a tool to be used for political gain. She gripped her skirt tightly. My brothers only ever called me the temple girl and mocked my gray hair, saying that it makes me look like an old woman. And when my body started to develop at an earlier age than most, they teased me for being a cow. I've never known peace. So this is my first time speaking with someone who had effectively laundered the circumstances of their birth through a baptism. It was also my first time learning that those baptized into another family were sometimes treated much, much worse than their new parents' actual children. Mother sure is something else for looking after me as she does her actual children. She had prepared my chambers, ensured that several baptismal outfits were made for me, and taken care to educate me into a proper arch-noble girl. My older brothers had never bullied me. In fact, on the contrary, my entire family had always done everything in their power to keep me safe. I expected that this would have been the case even if the Archduke hadn't adopted me. My family is from a mid-noble house, Gracia said. We don't make the plans in our faction. We're just expected to execute them. Political marriages play an important role in keeping the house secure, with daughters being married off as second or third wives. But I never felt bad about that. Gracia wanted to leave her family and start being treated as a regular noble, whether through political marriage or otherwise. She didn't even mind if she married a man old enough to be her father. Escaping her current situation would at least keep her from being called the temple girl. Being forced to offer my name was like the gods extending their hands to save me, Gresham continued. It was a chance to finally renounce that family and serve a lord or lady of my own choosing. To that end, I thought that the Saint of Ehrenfest, who shows compassion even to orphans as the High Bishop, wouldn't think anything about me being born to a shrine maiden. I thought that you would accept me for who I am. Of course she will! Gracia believed that she wasn't skilled enough to work as my attendant, but knowing that she could focus on private rather than public work had apparently brought her great peace of mind. But in the end, my parents were able to avoid execution. Upon hearing this news, my only thought was that I could no longer put on a sad face and give my name to you without any problems. Gracia said, having internally despaired while all the other children of the Veronica faction were rejoicing. I am fully confident that even if my father wasn't executed, he still committed grave crimes. Someone else may have come up with the plans and given him his orders, but I saw him struggling with the fact that he couldn't refuse to carry them out. Grisha sighed and continued, I can't imagine anyone would want to marry the daughter of a serious criminal. Rather than finding someone who will treat me well, my parents will desperately try to pair me off with anyone who can improve their status. I was belittled so much at home that I've developed a talent for reading the expressions of others and imagining the worst-case scenario. And as I see it, my chances of a pleasant life are practically non-existent. Her eyes downcast, Gracia went on to explain that when she had been celebrating the opportunity to give her a name, the worst-case scenario she had envisioned was her family surviving. She considered it just her luck that had come true. Gracia, to give someone your name is to put your very life in their hands, I said. If your lord or lady falls, so do you. Of course, I will do my best to ensure that such a thing never happens, but there is no guarantee that I won't end up traversing the same path as Lady Veronica, who lost her power and was imprisoned. Not to mention there are many areas in which I am lacking as a guardian. Have you considered all that carefully? I couldn't shake the feeling that she was seeing me through rose-tinted glasses and ignoring the demerits that would come from serving me. I have heard everything from Roderick and Judith. You treat even your commoner musician and chefs with respect, no, and you have made arrangements such that Roderick never has to see his family. I am confident that my decision here is the right one. Gracia gave a small smile and then added, I am an apprentice attendant after all. I can gather the information I need. Grisha's smile disappeared as quickly as it had come, replaced the stare with an expression of complete seriousness. This is my only chance here where my family has no eyes, she said. I'm aware that you have too few attendants right now. I will accept any order even if you tell me to devote my entire life to you and never take a husband. Or really, that's what I would want. Please accept my name, I beg of you. I could feel the crushing anxiety in her voice. This really was her last chance. I was already resolved to accept your name before, I said. If you still wish for me to take it, then I will. I thank you ever so much, Grisha said, a gentle smile arising on her face. It was at that moment that I truly understood my duty to Grisha. I needed to protect her smile, to ensure that she wouldn't have to return to staring down at staring somberly down at her feet. I gave her back the sound-blocking magic tool, and then informed my gathered retainers that I would be taking her name. Let us all gather ingredients from Mariella and Grisha next Earth Day, I said. Understood, everyone's replied. Matthias met my announcement with a look of contentment. In that case, once we return to the common room, I'll explain to everyone how to gather the high-quality ingredients needed for our name-giving face stone. I know of a particularly efficient method. And so we returned to the common room. Wilfred and Charlotte looked concerned when they saw me, but I gave them a smile and merely said, according to Matthias, there is a more efficient method of attaining high-quality ingredients. Naturally, it's not every day that one gets to hunt a Phoebus with parts as mana, an element rich as a Trinispher fallen, Matthias noted. Plus, Phoebus on that level are generally too strong for scholars and attendants to gather materials from. Doing so may take longer, but I am of the opinion that we should use a more reliable and consistent methods here. I nodded. If there were Phoebus like Trinispher fallens hanging out all over the place, then terrifying wouldn't even begin to describe it. Matthias was going to be explaining that what were essentially pro tips for gathering ingredients, so even children not intending to give their names came to listen. So what do you do? Wilfred asked. Go to the gathering spot, dye a Tygenim fruit with your mana, and then feed that dyed fruit to a Phoebus. The mana inside will cause the Phoebus to swell to an enormous size, at which point you slay it and obtain its stone. I discovered this method when watching Lady Rosamund enlarge Dunkelfoger's treasure during that first-year dinner game. Evidently, those Tygenim fruit found in the Arenfest gathering spot produced similar effects to Ruel's. However, Matthias continued, there is one problem. Tygenim fruit can only take one kind of mana at a time. You will need to dye as many as you have elements. It was necessary to separate one's mana into its elements before dyeing the fruit, so that this method can only be used by those who had such fine control. In other words, those in their third year and above. Luckily, this posed no issue at all, since only the older students had ended up needing to give their names. Have the apprentice knights weaken a Phoebus, then feed it mana-filled Tygenim fruit, Matthias summarized. Finish the beast off immediately after it grows, before I can get used to all the mana. I see. That'll take a while, yeah. I wanted some high-quality face stones myself, but I think I'll leave it for later, Wilfred said, opting out for the time being. Lenore looked at both Wilfred and Charlotte, her brow furrowed. Given that students will need to be guarded while dyeing the fruit, and the Phoebus will need to be weakened to the brink of death, this trip will require many nights. How many can you lend us, Lord Wilfred, Lady Charlotte? Sister, Charlotte said, turning to me, how many of your guard knights are staying behind in the dormitory on the day? I didn't know everyone's plans for Earth Day, so I gave Lenore a meaningful look, prompting her to answer in my stead. The plan is for all of us to come, Lenore said with a smile. Lady Rosamund is going to the gathering spot, and we must see to her protection. This is my first time hearing that, Lenore, I said. That would be because I am only now deciding it. After hearing Matthias' explanation, she replied casually. I have many reasons for this. First, I do not want us to be separated. It is unwise to split the party. Second, dyeing a Tygenim fruit can be quite a lengthy process, and I would like for you to protect them in the gathering spot which shines a shield during this time. No matter how many apprentice knights we bring with us, it carries too much risk to guard 4 charges simultaneously while hunting Phoebus. She had a point. By having me shield the tree and its surroundings with a shield, the apprentice knights could hunt without needing to worry about us, and the 4 dying Tygenim fruit could focus on just that. Dying Ruel's had been a nightmare precisely because they needed to grow in the moonlight, which meant that I couldn't use Shuzaria's shield as it would have blocked the light. We even ended up failing that first attempt. Furthermore, Lenore continued, if we are to collect ingredients for this many people at once, then the gathering spot may need to be replenished with a blessing, which will also be an opportunity for you to expand some of your mana. This, alongside your prolonged efforts to maintain Shuzaria's shield, should aid you in decompressing more of your mana. Right, that last reason was pretty big. I responded with a firm nod. We had started to receive considerable fewer face stones from Arenfest, so I needed to take all the chances to let out my mana that I could. Well, Charlotte interjected, if Sister is going to be shielding us, perhaps I should go along as well. Lady Charlotte, a Tygenim fruit dyed with one's mana is a valuable ingredient all on its own, no? Good point, Wilfred agreed. In that case, I'll go too. And even if we don't end up feeding them to Phoebus for their face stones, the fruit alone is bound to be worth having. And so it was decided that everyone in the dormitory, excluding the first years, would go on this trip together. My shield would provide us all with much greater safety than usual, and we could all gather as much as we wanted, since everything was going to be regenerated right after. The first years will stay here, so they naturally cannot travel to the gathering spot without a high beast, I said. Please look forward to joining us next year. The first years looked on with envy, having not started their brewing class or learned to form high beasts. Among them, however, a lone voice spoke up. Lady Rosemont, I already know how to make my high beast. Plus, I'm your guard knight, so please take me with you. It was Theodore, looking like the absolute last thing he wanted was to be left behind. He really was just like Judith, yeah. Now, Theodore, Judith said, putting on her big sister face. You're barely used to using your high beast, so you just slow everyone down. I think you should just sit this one out. A smirk crept onto my face. Had their positions been reversed so that Judith was the one being left behind, she absolutely would have gotten all teary-eyed and pled for us to bring her too. And with that in mind, I granted Theodore permission to come. We do need as many apprentice knights as we can get, I said. You may come, Theodore. Thank you, he replied, his expression shifting from a look of relief to a subtle, proud smile. Now that we had decided which apprentice knights were going to be coming with us, Lenore, Alexis, and Natalie began to discuss the finer details. They went over how best to use Shasaria's shield, how to go about gathering ingredients, which Fey beasts need to be exterminated, and which ones will need to be weakened to turn into Fey stones, among other things. For the most part, this had become a meeting of apprentice knights. Feline listened for a short while, then suddenly clapped her hands together and said, Let us prepare lunch boxes, Lady Rosemont. The gathering spot is warm and free of snow, and with your shield of wind, we will be free to eat at our leisure and without fear of any Fey beast attacks. There was an excited grin spread across her face. Oh my, what a splendid idea, Charlotte cried with delight. I believe I shall have quiche. We will also need to prepare warm tea, Lady Charlotte. Charlotte and my retainer suggested that we should prepare lunch, quickly snowballed into our Earth Day gathering trip becoming a picnic, and with that in mind, meat pies would be delightful as well. Oh, but would sandwiches not be easier to eat, Charlotte replied. I'm going to prepare something too, Wolfgang interjected, forcing his way into the conversation after seeing how much Charlotte and I were enjoying ourselves. Our picnic had now gone a step further into a full-blown dormitory field trip. The first years had gone from looking disappointed to outright vexed. Oh my gosh, you made it worse! I would need to ask Hugo and Ella to cook them something special to make up for this. What will you have your chefs make, sister? Charlotte asked. You can't have a bento without onigiri, right? Why, there are many tasty choices that I simply cannot decide. And so came Earth Day. Several apprentice knights had gone to the gathering spot early to reduce the Fey beast population, and when we received word that they were done, we went along after them. All of our lunches were packed securely in my extra-large panda bus, and our group soon became caught up in excited chatter. Once we arrived, I produced my shield around the Tegenum tree, and the gathering began. The apprentice knights got to work weakening the Fey beast outside the barrier, while Theodore stood by my side as a guard knight. Hold this Tegenum fruit, focus, and pour your mana of only one element into it, Matthias instructed. Continue this until the entire fruit has turned the color of that element. We all gripped our Tegenum fruit and started dying, as Matthias had said. Just like with the Ruel, the Tegenum fruit were very resistant to the flow of mana, but I continued to force my mana into them until they were completely dyed. Naturally, I didn't want to go as far as to make one of each element right away. Lady Rosemont, my mana isn't going in at all, Mariella said, looking at my 3 dyed fruit with troubled eyes. I followed her gaze and then gave a nostalgic smile. It hadn't been all that long ago that I had been in that same position. Fey plants are living beings too, I said, so they are very resistant to mana. You will not have much choice but to take your time and use rejuvenation potions. I was feeling somewhat tired from having dyed these 3 fruits at once, so I decided to rest in Lessie. I may have gotten a little healthier since my second Jaree, but there was still a very genuine risk that I might overdo it and collapse again. Still, thanks to decompressing my mana, I was feeling noticeably better than before. Oh yeah, I think I heard once that too much mana is bad for the body. I picked up a book and started to read, hoping that I would be able to reach the end of my time in the Royal Academy while remaining healthy. The sun was shining brightly, and as I reclined back into one of my panda bus soft chairs, I thought about what an elegant way this was to spend one's day off. While I was reading and maintaining the shield, all those who wanted to give their names secured the face stones they needed. From there, we enjoyed a tasty lunch and some nice conversation. Overall, it was a very fun Earth Day. Oh, this lady. I hate this lady. Anyway, shoot. Do I want to continue? Yes, I do. Professor Frolarm's class. I wouldn't make any progress in the scholar course until the professor set dates for my exams, so I sent them each in ordinance at once. Their replies came in steadily, so as the end of the week drew nearer, and soon enough I was waiting only on Frolarm. She had shown Ehrenfest nothing but hostility thus far, so I expected that she would use her authority as a professor to exploit my situation. Perhaps she would say that she couldn't find the time for my exam, or claim to have never received my correspondence. I wonder what Professor Frolarm will do this year, I said to my attendants, who were helping me to manage my schedule. Feline rested a troubled hand on her cheek. She should know by now that not even changing the curriculum can hinder you. And your status as the Saint of Ehrenfest will surely only make it harder for her to act against you. You have demonstrated your great talents so many times now that if she did attempt to belittle you, she would only be met with disbelieving stares. She must be struggling to think of mean things to do at this point. Brunhilde listened to Feline's somewhat twisted perspective with a wry smile, then added, even if Professor Farlam has no intention of allowing a personal exam, as you suspect, Lady Rosamund, is that not inconsequential in the grand scheme of things? You need only pass the final exam after all. It would be wise for you to have her exam for last, and instead get a head start on your socializing and research. If passing were my only aim, then yes, that approach would work, I said. However, relying on the final exam would potentially damage both my reputation and my chances of coming first in class. If more than one person secured the highest grade, then glory went to whoever passed first, and the last thing I wanted to do was break my promise to Ferdinand. Just to be safe, I already sent a very deliberately worded ordinance to Herscher. I cannot come to your laboratory until after my exams are over, nor can I begin our joint research with the greater duchies. Is there anything I can do? My hope is that the Professor Network will resolve things for me. After breakfast, but before our morning classes, I made my way to the common room, whereupon I convened my siblings and their retainers. We needed to discuss our upcoming research project with Dronkel. I cannot talk today! We should decide on the fundamentals first, so that nobody finds themselves lost for words on the receiving end of a question from Professor Gundolf, I said. Wolverine shook his head. Rosamund, I understand that we should inform our apprentice scholars about this research, but shouldn't you speak to Father first? I've already mentioned in one of my daily reports that we are starting a project with Dronkel centered around your and Charlotte's retainers. That said, student research doesn't require the Oth's permission, does it? This doesn't seem like something worth disturbing him over. I was pretty sure that nobody else in the Royal Academy was giving detailed reports on their student research or requesting the Archduke's approval for it. Wilfred and Charlotte exchanged looks. It wouldn't require his permission in most cases, but with you overseeing things, this is sure to be anything but normal. Plus, this research into paper is deeply involved with Ehrenfest's principal industries, Charlotte added. You should discuss it with Mother and Father, sister. They were both in agreement, so it seemed wise for me to listen to them. I suppose we can wait until Ehrenfest's response to my report then, I conceded. That said, I can't imagine that our research will have much of a bearing on our own industries. We won't be teaching Dronkel to make paper. We will simply be looking into the use of the paper made from Fabies. You think so? Indeed, my focus is on what can be done with strange paper and magic tools such as those made from Ilgner's Fey plants. The actual process of creating the paper remains a valuable trump card for us, so we will save that for the Archduke Conference. It will not be published as Royal Academy research. Even Rinsham is too much for Dronkel to perfectly recreate. Nobody ever thinks to include the scrub, so they will not stand a chance against plant paper, which is far more complicated and requires so many specialized tools. And, above all else, they surely will not expect that commoners are the ones making this paper that functions similarly to magic tools. There can be no doubting that, Ignaz and Marianne replied in agreement. Magic tools can only be made by nobles. I still couldn't believe that Fey plant paper was made through the same process as its normal variety. Magic tools with mana in them were apparently made via brewing, just as we sold the Rinsham production method during the Archduke Conference. To balance our oil supply and demand, we will want to sell our paper-making methods such that our duchy's trees are not expended. However, when we do this, do you not think we should try to make as much money as we can? I gazed intently at Wilfred and Charlotte, a glimmer in my eye. This joint research is our means to exploit Dronkel into raising the value of our paper. Find out the extent to which commoner-made paper can be used as magic tools, the most effective means of using it, and what needs to be done to raise its efficacy. How much we can earn may depend on the results you find. Rosamund, you're wearing a pretty evil expression right now, Wilfred noted, seeming a bit put off. Benno and Ferdinand's influence, no doubt. Oops, has my merchant spirit leaked through to the surface? I quickly shut my mouth and smiled, doing my best to switch out of merchant mode. In short, this is important for bringing wealth to Ehrenfest. But if you consider this research so crucial, sister, then should you not be leading it personally? That would make sense, but I feel that I should interact with Professor Gundolf as little as possible. Why, has he been tormenting you? Charlotte asked, her expression changing. Oh, no, not at all. It just seems safer to have Ignaz and Marianne take my place, as they know little about paper, and will thus be immune to questioning. It was possible that they might learn the production method through reports and such, but without having attempted it themselves, there was no way they would manage to explain it well enough for anyone else to understand. I'm not sure I follow. Were I to carry out our research with Professor Gundolf, then I would most likely reveal too many of our trade secrets without meaning to. This won't be a problem for Ignaz and Marianne. They can't leak what they don't know. I was well aware of my tendency to run my mouth without meaning to. I also knew that I was terrible at resisting even the most obvious bait. Sure, I was able to keep a level head right now, but I would most certainly end up blabbing the moment I went up against old conniving Gundolf. The best solution was for me to avoid getting near him in the first place. He who fears drowning shall walk near no wells, quoth the wise man. The best defense is avoiding danger in the first place. Wow, I sure have grown. What should we do when Professor Gundolf probes us about the paper-making process, Marianne asked. We are researching the usage of magic tools. There is no need for him to know about how paper is made. You can inform him that his questions are best waited save for the Archduke Conference, else he can look into the matter himself on his own time. Understood. We went on to discuss how much information was safe to share for our joint research project. Then I sent a request for paper made from Ilgner's fate plans to be sent over alongside a report on the research's scope. I was clearing one scholar course exam after another, and no matter where I went, the professors all asked me about the joint research I was doing with Greater Duchies. It seemed that the rumors had already spread quite far. I always kept my responses terse, saying that nothing was set in stone yet, or as our obs had yet to discuss the idea, but the professors never seemed to believe me. As it turned out, their source in both cases was dormitory supervisors Roffin and Gundolf were actively spreading word of our joint research venture to make sure it went ahead as seemed. In the midst of all this, Fraulein sent me a response saying that she could schedule my exam for tomorrow morning. She had taken her sweet time, but I wasn't going to complain. I had honestly expected her to ignore me outright outright refuse my request. It looks like I've been too quick to judge you, Professor Fraulein. I'm sorry. Despite her malicious words and actions, it seemed that she was at least willing to do the bare minimum expected of her as a professor. I apologized to her in my heart, but then sent her confirmation of my receipt. An instant later, an ordinance arrived from Herscher. I said to Fraulein that with all these rumors about Ehrenfest doing collaborative research with Greater Duchies, I wondered what reason there would be for Ehrensbach being left out, especially since the bond between it and Ehrenfest should be stronger than ever with Ferdinand there. I wondered if perhaps it was due to a certain someone not keeping up proper communications, the bird said. Expect a response from her soon. Yay! Herscher, you're awesome! As it turned out, Herscher was the reason that Fraulein had replied to me. I reported that we had scheduled a date for my exam and then thanked her. It wasn't too long before the ordinance arrived. Mention joint research with Ehrensbach to receive a passing grade. Your research with Raymond should meet all the requirements if you make prototypes of his designs and publish your research or results. It took Raymond quite some time to realize his designs, owing to his scarce supply of mana. If we collaborated, however, and the actual creation process was delegated to me, then I could research various aspects of the Verliebre's magic tools. As I pondered this, Herscher gave me some more advice. She wanted me to find an excuse to summon her. Perhaps the fact that our joint research was being done in her laboratory would work, so that she could oversee the grading process and ensure that it was all done fairly. Holy cow, I never thought Professor Herscher would be such a strong ally. Yay! My brief conversation with Herscher had given me hope that I might actually secure a passing grade in Fraulein's class. I was relieved, but at the same time, do these rumors about our joint research projects really hold enough weight for Professor Fraulein to consider these a problem? I asked my retainers, is it not just conversation between professors at this point? I was already done with the Archduke candidate course and was taking my exams for the scholar course separately from the other students, so I wasn't aware of the ongoing rumors. Well, Lazletta said, many students do know about our joint research, and at this point, everyone believes the matter is settled. I was not aware that two professors were largely responsible for leaking this information, though. Feline gave a vigorous nod of agreement, having collected some information herself now that she was doing the scholar course. She was going to the scholar course, a specialty building. There is no mistaking that our research will receive universal praise once they are published. Several duchies have even petitioned Professor Herscher about joining our collaborative project with Dunkelfelder. Naturally, these duchies were only interested in securing connections to Greater Duchies and the royal family. Professor Herscher had turned them all down as a result, saying that they would not serve as good research samples. This is her first time properly helping us, so I never noticed it before, but Professor Herscher really is competent. Well, I mean, she's freaking Ferdinand's teacher. Of course she's going to be competent. Many duchies have also asked Professor Gundolf about joining our research with Dronkel. Lazletta continued. He is flatly refusing those who aren't skilled enough to be of any help, though, so we don't need to worry about that. Feline nodded again. We should really be concerned about whether Lord Ignaz and Lady Marianne will meet his standards. He is sure to double down on working with you directly if not. All in all, my retainers were making Gundalf seem like someone to be wary of. Yeah, I really do need to avoid him. While collecting information on the current state of the Royal Academy, I went to Frolim's laboratory in the Scholar Building for my exam. I had expected there to be documents, materials, and magic tools strewn all over, a sight I was very much accustomed to. So what I actually saw took me by surprise. Seeing such a neat and tidy laboratory actually made me tear up a little. It's so well organized in here. This is just what I'd expect from a professor who specializes in gathering and controlling information. The room exuded self-discipline, and everything was in its place. It really was perfect for Frolim. Allow me to cut to the chase, Lady Rosemine, Frolim began. There are rumors that Ehrenfest will be doing research projects with Dronko and Dunkelfelger. Is this true? Just as Hersher had said, she was entirely focused on this one thing. I gave a confident smile. That is what we are hoping for, but our ops have yet to discuss the matter, so I cannot say whether it will come to be. That said, with both dormitory supervisors so motivated, I imagine it will only be a matter of time. Now, may we begin the exam? My, Frolim explained, her eyebrows shooting up. Should you not be thinking more about your relationship with Arensbach? Your teacher's engagement to Lady Detlinde was supposed to bring our duchies closer together. It is unfathomable that you're treating Arensbach with such disrespect. I am already being very considerate of the relationship between our two duchies, but I don't believe Ferdinand will accept, Ordo Schnelli without, Gluckletat's blessing. It is very troubling. It was an indirect way of saying that our discussion wouldn't even be on the table unless I passed this class. Frolim flashed me a look of vexation, then took out the exam paper. In stark contrast to last year, the questions were in all unreasonable. I answered them all without trouble, and then returned the paper. Now then, allow me to summon Professor Hersher, I said. Frolim widened her eyes in confusion, so I gave an exaggerated look of surprise in response and placed a hand on my cheek. Oh, have I misunderstood something, I asked. As this is my final scholar class, I thought we could pivot into discussing our joint research with Arensbach. Not at all. We would absolutely be discussing the joint research, but why summon Hersher? She blinked at me in surprise, having never imagined that I would agree so easily. She really was bad at dealing with the unexpected. Professor Hersher is my dormitory supervisor. She needs to be present for these discussions so that she can report them to Ob Ehrenfest. Do you not agree? I smiled and prepared an ordinance, not mentioning that Hersher hadn't been present for the other joint research discussions. Professor Hersher, I wish to discuss doing a joint research project with Arensbach. Do you have a moment? Hersher replied with only one word. Certainly. She then arrived so suddenly that I could guess she had been standing in wait. After looking between Frolim and me, Hersher sighed. Good day, Frolim, Lady Rosemine. I meant to ask, should this research discussion not wait until you have finished your classes? I recall you saying that you could not visit my laboratory due to being busy with your studies. Professor Frolim's class is my last one. Oh, but my test is yet to be graded. Might I ask if we could do that now? Now that Hersher was here, Frolim wouldn't be able to fake my score. She grimaced as she took the exam paper over to her desk. Hersher was watching closely to ensure there was no foul play, and barely a moment passed before she interjected. Frolim, you... Oh, dear me, I appear to have given Lady Rosemine the wrong test. Oh, not that it seems to be a problem. She answered all the questions correctly. What did you say? Frolim examined the sheet at once, her eyebrows raised even higher than before. Did something happen? I asked. You got done. Ha ha. A test you just took was for 5th years, Hersher explained. How do you even know this material, Lady Rosemine? Ferdinand forced me to learn the syllabus for every single grade, so it's all the same to me. I had been taught everything up until graduation in one go, so I wasn't even sure what counted as 3rd-year material. Jesus, Ferdinand, dude! I know you're being prepared and all this, but Jesus, they get a little overboard there. The questions that Frolim had given to me had seemed fine enough, so I hadn't thought twice when answering them. Ferdinand truly does demand the unreasonable, Hersher said with a hand on her forehead. I am amazed that you can keep up with him. Meanwhile, Frolim was muttering, this isn't normal, over and over again. I personally believe that her giving me a test meant for older students was the abnormality here. As was Ferdinand going so over the top as to have prepared it for me, I was normal. Does this still count as a pass, I asked, or do I need to redo the test with a 3rd-year paper? Hersher turned to Frolim. Is there time for a retake? I was under the impression that we were going to speak about a new joint research project. Unable to endure the pressure that Hersher and I were putting on her, Frolim went bright red and hysterically screamed, "That will do for the exam!" She then took a seat to indicate that she was ready for our discussion to begin. Though I couldn't help but notice how aggressively she dropped into her chair. It couldn't have been good for her backside, but at least I understood that she was feeling very displeased. After coming to an unspoken agreement that it was best not to address the elephant in the room, Hersher and I dived straight into the matter of our research project. If our two judges are to collaborate, I said, then I firmly believe we should use the research that Raymond is doing in Professor Herscher's laboratory. He is Ferdinand's disciple and should now be serving as his retainer as well. Publishing our work as magic tools should suffice as joint research. My goodness, Fräulein explained. That would make it Herscher's research, not a collaborative effort with Ehrensbach. No, it would not, I replied with a smile. The work that Raymond is doing is his own. And Ehrensbach will publish it at the introductory tournament. Professor Herscher's laboratory is simply the ideal place for us to carry out our research. As Professor Herscher is Raymond's and Ferdinand's teacher, and I am Ferdinand's disciple. That said, there is a very considerable chance that both Professor Herscher and I, Raymond, will become too absorbed in their work to adequately report back to Ehrensbach. You are familiar with Professor Herscher's tendencies, I expect. Yes, I am. I cannot imagine her giving any proper reports once she is consumed, Fräulein replied, shaking her head and grimacing. It was clear at a glance that she had experienced this firsthand. Herscher merely smiled in response. She was playing along. Thus, I would pray for Ordochinelli, the goddess of couriers, to involve Ferdinand in this joint research, I concluded. It would be easier for me to contact Ferdinand under the guise of consulting my teacher about our joint research project. Not to mention, we could secure another route of communication by having Fräulein send messages to Ehrensbach herself, which she was sure to agree to, as doing so would holster her reputation. Checks and censorship were to be expected, so we would only be able to write things that we didn't mind those in Ehrensbach seeing. But having an option other than Raymond would surely work in our favor. Professor Fräulein, as the dormitory supervisor of Ehrensbach, could you become our Ordochinelli and secure the success of our research, I asked. Fräulein's lips curved into a grin. She evidently liked the thought of adopting a position that would allow her to see all of our reports and play a key role in improving the relationship between our two duchies. Very well, I shall give reports, as is my duty as a dormitory supervisor. However, Lady Rosamond, I must warn you, limit your abnormal words and deeds, else cracks may form between our duchies, and Lord Ferdinand may begin to struggle more in Ehrensbach. So essentially she's telling you to stop being weird, or else Ferdinand will have a harder time in Ehrensbach. Herscher stood up. It seemed the matter is settled then. She indicated that we should go, but Fräulein called out to me before we could reach the door. Lady Rosamond, how has your health been as of late? Had there been any changes, perhaps? I gave Fräulein a questioning look, unsure what had spurred such a question. I am just aware that you have a terribly weak constitution, she explained, faking a look of concern. I am a tad worried that you might not have the strength for all this research. There have been changes, yes, but, for the worse. I wasn't sure what she was trying to find out, so I gave a vague answer with a half-smile. I certainly hadn't lied to her. Things were taking a turn for the worse when you consider my unexpected blessing bomb during music class and my transformation into a human glow stick during whirling class, among other things. I see, Fräulein replied, a thin smile playing on her lips and a dull glimmer appearing in her eyes. It was a worrying reaction, to say the least. Oh, I don't know if you gave the right answer or not. Oh. Anyway, I'll get to work on everything, and I'll see you guys in the next one.